Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Work From Home Show. This is Naresh Vissa, along with my co-host Adam Schrader, and today we have a third person with us. Her name is Laura Vanderkam. Laura Vanderkam is a host of the Before Breakfast podcast, the New Corner Office podcast, and co-host of the Best of Both Worlds podcast. So she is a serial podcaster. Her 2016 TED Talk, How to Gain Control of Your Free Time, has been viewed millions upon millions of times. She is the multiple best-selling author of Juliet School of Possibilities, a little story about the power of priorities. Also, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, a short guide to making over your mornings and life. And also, I Know She Does It, How Successful Women Make the Most of Their Time. And also the book, 168 Hours, You Have More Time Than You Think. But the reason why we brought her on today's show, or one of the primary reasons, is her new book titled The New Corner Office, How the Most Successful People Work From Home. Laura Vanderkam, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's first start. You've written a lot of books, so I think we're going to have a great discussion today. But let's start with working from home. Do you think that the new corner office moving forward is going to be our home office?
I definitely think that working from home is going to be a much bigger part of our working lives from now on. For so many years, it was viewed as just a one day a week work-life balance perk that people could get if they'd worked for a company for a couple of years and, needed a little bit more balance. But in the past few months, we've seen that so many jobs can be done remotely. And granted, it's not an ideal situation, but given that so much of work is still moving forward and, things haven't completely fallen apart despite so many people working from home for the first time, it does suggest that we should be able to incorporate remote work more into our day-to-day lives in the future. Certainly, there are very few businesses that can argue it won't work for us anymore. We've seen that, in fact, it can work.
One of the things that people are concerned about when they work from home is the fact that, when you have kids, and especially now as schools may not be going back not permanently, but they may not be going back full time at first. How do you think it's going to impact the work that people are doing from home if they're having to also worry about their kids there? Like do you have any tips for how you can best handle that, even though, it's something completely new?
Yes. Well, clearly this is not the way working from home is supposed to be done.
This is like crisis work from home.
This is crisis work from home situation. In the past, when I've talked with people who want to try working from home, and sometimes people are like, hey, it sounds like I'll be able to save money on childcare. I'm like, no. You will not be able to do that long term. You need somebody else, some other adult in charge of young children during the hours you plan to work. Now, of course, in this crisis situation, a lot of people who were relying on their school to be that adult in charge, that was not available, or many daycares closed down, or people, couldn't combine their houses in a sitter's household, for instance. And so a lot of people were just trying to make do. But, despite all that, people have gotten a fair amount done. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Like, it's because when we have a very small amount of time to work, we figure out what we absolutely have to get done. And if you repeatedly do those things, you can continue to make forward progress. I would just challenge people to figure out what hours you do have available for focused work, whether that's because you've got a sitter or if you have a partner that you can trade off with, have a pretty regular schedule of covering for each other. That's great. But figure out what hours you can work, figure out what is most important for you to do during that time, and then only do those things. Like don't spend nap time cleaning out your inbox.
Yeah, I've talked about it on the show before, is that I'm a homeschooling dad of 4 who works from home, and it's one of those things. I don't do a full-time job. I just have some side stuff that I do, but it's one of those things that I designate. I know that I'm going to have 2 hours in the middle of the day when my kids are resting and playing other games. I'm going to have the mornings before they wake up. I'm going to have the evenings, and it's really great to have the jobs that don't require specific hours and are just results oriented, for people to realize, oh, I can work at any time. So if I have to do that, then if I have a boss who's not breathing down my neck about it, you have alternate times that you can work.
Oh, definitely. And it can work with flexibility. And, if you can cover for another adult in your house, for instance. The issue, of course, is people who had sort of normal jobs who suddenly had to start working from home in March. And you're like, well, wait, we're all supposed to be on a call at 10 o'clock every day. Well, that's a little harder to make work.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as the ideas and skills in today's workplace, do you think that is today's currency, the ideas and skills, and not necessarily like the education or a certificate or degree?
Well, I'd like to think we're moving toward that because, so many people move between jobs and move between self-employment and regular employment that, your degree is sort of useful for the first job. And then after that, far less relevant for anything that happens. I remember I was doing a speech at a particular firm once, and somebody asked, well, where's your degree from? I'm like, what? Like, nobody ever asked that as part of an introduction. It was just so surprising to me that anyone might actually care. But, it's definitely, as we move toward working from home, you have to be judging people on results, because you lack the ability to judge people based on sort of physical presence, which is how a lot of offices have operated. The person who looks like the go-getter is the one who's there early and staying late, the one who's always available and never takes time off. And you just can't do that when you're not seeing each other in your desks. You have to judge on something else. And I really hope that something else will be what people are getting done.
Now, when we talked about parents staying home with the kids and adults having more, daily chores, you wrote the book, What Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, and that's even more crucial, as we were just discussing, in time management. So what are some of the things that people can do to kind of start their day off right and to make sure that they're setting themselves up for a successful working day?
The ideal activities for before breakfast, for first thing in the morning, are anything that's important to you that life has a way of crowding out. And so if you are caring for your children full time while trying to work from home, that is generally going to be whatever your top priority work project is for the day. See if you can knock it out in the morning, first thing, whether it's because your partner is with the kids or they're not up yet or whatever it happens to be. But if this is time that you can, in fact, have to yourself to get it done, you can feel so much more relaxed the rest of the day. Like, you're not like, oh, God, I still have that thing I have to get to. I wonder if the kids are going to take their nap. I wonder if, they can watch the movie now so I can get to it. Am I going to get to it before quitting time? It's already done. And then you can, enjoy more of the rest of the day. Now, if you do have more sort of regularly available work hours, then, mornings are also a great time for personal priorities. A lot of people exercise first thing in the morning. It's a great time. You only have to shower once and it's done. It's not hanging over your head the rest of the day. If people have creative aspirations, you want to write the great American novel, you're probably not going to write it at night in the 20 minutes before you fall asleep. But if you get up early in the morning, you might make progress on it. So those are all great things to do in the morning.
Well, for the night owls who are listening, is it okay for productive night owls to skip the mornings?
Yes, it is totally okay. I say that for most people, morning is a great time to get stuff done because it is time that you can have to yourself before everybody else wants a piece of you. But if you happen to know about yourself that you are doing your best work at night, well, see what you can do to make time available at night, right? Like, if you don't have to wake up at the crack of dawn with children or for a job, then maybe that time is more available for you. The one thing I would caution, though, is that not everybody who thinks they are a night owl is actually a night owl. A lot of people who think that they are not morning people, the reality is that they are tired in the morning. But that is a different matter. That's if you didn't go to bed on time the night before. If you are, going to bed at a reasonable time, and you still feel like in the morning you are not, at your best, and that you are more creative at night, that's fine. But if you are regularly getting enough sleep, often morning can be an incredibly productive time.
Yeah, I would say Naresh and I tend to work a bit late. This podcast started because of an idea he texted me about at around 11 o'clock my time, so midnight his time. But when we talked about working from home and being more results-oriented, I think that it's going to lead to more opportunities for younger people because you're not having to necessarily wait for, your older boss to decide to retire or something, and you can prove, hey, I'm doing all the work I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm doing it really well, and I've got the time management down, and that it could lead to a more successful career path for younger people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly think it can. I mean, partly just because working from home is incredibly efficient. If you do manage to conquer sort of the distractions that people are dealing with on the home front, you can, you're not wasting time on a commute. So that's time that you can spend thinking about your career path and learning new skills and networking and other such things that we all say we'd like to spend more time doing, but we don't because we feel like we've run out of time and we're busy enough as it is. Removing the commute from a workday, I mean, it just opens up incredible amounts of time for so many people. Then there's also the matter of feeling more comfortable working when we can work as we work best. I don't know about you, but many of my past jobs have been in office buildings that are completely freezing. I feel like I can't get anything done because my fingers are turning blue. And if that's how you're feeling, it's, you're probably not doing your best work. Just being able to work how you work best is incredibly important, and sure could offer all sorts of opportunities for young people as well.
Well, talking about young people again, I did read a research report that corporations are realizing that the younger folks are hungrier and more productive, and that there's going to be kind of this mass layoffs of the middle management across America. And again, this is just a research report. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but working from home has really gotten rid of the bureaucracy and quantified productivity, I think. So why do you think working from home could be a huge advantage in advancing one's career moving forward?
Well, I definitely do think it can be a strategic advantage. And that's a different mindset that I think has been out there. It's often been seen as just a work-life balance perk, that if you want to work from home a couple days of the week, you're taking your foot off the gas. And I don't think that necessarily needs to be the case. And we're certainly seeing that now. There's a couple ways that working from home can be a strategic advantage, both for individuals and for organizations. For individuals, you can manage your energy so much better if you are working from home a couple days per week. Without the commute, you have extra time to sleep, you have extra time to exercise. You aren't burning energy doing something that isn't accomplishing anything. And being able to work how you work best, the hours that you work best, can just really help with keeping your energy levels up, so that on the days that you are maybe going into the office or traveling for work, you're able to deal with that without feeling burned out. In terms of another strategic advantage is that, when you work in an office 40 hours a week, you spend a lot of time with your immediate colleagues, probably past the point of diminishing returns. And there's often group norms about we get coffee with each other, we get lunch with each other. You almost feel like you need to explain yourself if you're going off to get coffee with somebody else external. But when you're at home, you don't necessarily have those group norms. And so if you are smart about it, you can build a much wider and more robust network, of people who aren't just your immediate colleagues. And organizations can be just so much more nimble. I mean, the companies that had work from home plans in place before all this happened were able to just quickly pivot to that. Whereas there are several companies I've talked to that basically nobody even had laptops, right? Like people didn't have the ability to work from home because they hadn't known that they were going to have to do it. And all of a sudden people are like, wait, we've got to buy 200 laptops overnight to get to everybody so that we can keep working. And that's just a much, harder starting place for an organization. And there's really no reason people should have been in that place. Even if nobody could predict a pandemic. I mean, people have snow days. There could be highway closures near your office. There's always reasons you might need to have people work remotely. And so being prepared for that is just a huge strategic advantage.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's heard about people's, the work wife, the work husband, the work this, that, and the other. And there's that sense of community, and you can sometimes get a little too close or sometimes feel, like you said, that you need to go do everything with them. But if you're not working in the office and everybody's working from home, how can you still foster that sense of togetherness and, kind of we're all one team and pulling in the same direction?
Well, one thing you can do is preserve sort of social chit chat time, that you would have in the office. You can do the same thing virtually. Certainly, when you have video conferences, you can open up with a few minutes of social conversation. I suggest actually putting it on the agenda so that people can prepare for it and know that, hey, we're going to spend the first 5 minutes just sort of checking in on each other. Maybe have some topic that we can all connect with. What's an interesting movie you've seen recently, or a song you're really enjoying, or what was your first job. These are silly icebreaker questions, but they serve a purpose in that they get everyone talking, and when you feel that sense of connection, you work much better together. I would say, when in doubt, do video conference. And I know there's a lot of Zoom fatigue out there right now. People are like, I'm tired of having to do my hair, dress up, or whatever, and I get that, but that's more meeting fatigue than it is anything else. There are way too many meetings. It's not that it's video conferencing that's the problem. It's that there's too many meetings in general, and people tend to do them as video conferences when they work from home. In general, video conferences are better than audio only because you can see each other's faces. You can read reactions. You feel closer to each other. Our brains are not able to distinguish really between seeing someone on a screen and seeing someone in person. We pretty much think it's the same thing. It's this phenomenon. If you ever know anyone who's worked in television, like for the rest of their lives, people are coming up to them in the supermarket saying, I know you from somewhere. It's like, no, you don't know them from somewhere. You saw them on TV, but you felt like you know them because you're seeing them over and over again. So same thing, see each other's faces, preserve time for social calls, take social breaks together. If you would have grabbed coffee with a colleague, call them up and have a cup of coffee while you're on the phone together.
You mentioned earlier the efficiency that's increased while working from home. Do you have any research, or maybe just through personal experience, on how time management becomes easier and how time just kind of frees up because of the work from home, and how this benefits happiness and productivity in general?
Well, certainly knowing that the commute is gone is key. That is so much time that is just wasted in people's lives. There's been research finding that, the commutes are among the least happy parts of people's days. So if you remove them, it's hard to see how they couldn't, on average, be happier. There's an interesting survey done by Flex Jobs that asked the question of, when you really need to get something done, where would you prefer to work? And only about 8 or 9% of people said they would work in their offices during work hours. Some chunk of people, about the same amount, said they'd work in their offices, but outside of work hours, when presumably colleagues aren't talking to them about things they don't necessarily want to talk about. And about half of them said, home office. When people really need to get stuff done, home office is where it's at.
Yeah, I used to come into the office at, my wife would have to go to work at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. and I would go to the office then. I would just leave with her because I knew if I got there at 6:30 or 6:15 or whatever, there would be nobody else there, and I would have an hour and a half or 2 hours that I could spend actually getting stuff done, because I knew as soon as everybody else got there, there was going to be the whole oh, what'd you do last night? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? And the whole office chit chat that happens as it comes around. So I completely agree. Such a waste
of time. It's like, I can't believe we're both millennials, Laura. I'm not sure about you, but I can't believe this is how corporate America functioned for decades upon decades.
Yes, it is somewhat ridiculous when you think about it. Why? You think about how much time and gas and energy wasted so people can go places just to email and call people in other places. And no one would wish a pandemic on anyone, but one thing is it has forced so much change in, a few months. And I would have people say to me all the time in the past, like, oh, remote work, that's such an interesting phenomenon, but it would never work for us. Well, of course it would work for you. It would work for everyone. It's just there's nothing special about your meetings and your emails that have to be done in the office. It's just you can't get your head around the idea. And now people had to. And so it turns out it can work.
Yeah, I think that harkens back to the idea that you have to have the 40-hour work week, and that you're gonna be there from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever, and people weren't able to let that go. So how do you think it's going to be best? I know we talked about it being results oriented, but how do you think it's going to be best used in the office to not have your boss, or even if you are a supervisor, to get out of that mindset of, I should be able to call Naresh at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and he's going to answer, or I should be able to call him at this time and he's going to be there, or try to do that? How can we get kind of everybody out of the 40-hour-a-week mindset?
Well, I would say that there is, there's a couple issues there. I mean, yes, we need to get out of the 40-hour-a-week mindset. Like, the fact that you worked 40 hours does not mean you got anything done. I mean, we need to focus on setting sort of each week. What are your priorities for the week? What are the goals for the week? How do we break that down by day? Like, have I gotten them done? If so, it's been a good day, whatever time it happens to be. That said, I would say if you're working closely with a team, there are some upsides to just picking up the phone and calling. And hopefully people can establish certain hours where it's okay to call and others where people are sort of more focused on individual work. But what tends to happen otherwise, like when people don't do that, is they set formal meetings for everything, even if it was only a 2-minute conversation. And you waste all kinds of time because people stop work 5 minutes before the meeting, right, to wait to dial in, when it turns out that the stuff you needed to discuss could have gotten done in that time you were waiting to dial in. So, I do think there's some upsides of just picking up the phone and calling if you need a question answered, rather than, filling your time with all sorts of schedule clutter.
Well, to me, the big problem is the formalization of all this. Like, if I want to call my friend, I call my friend. I don't send them a text message and say, hey, are you free at X 3 o'clock this Saturday to talk on the phone? I just call them, and if they don't pick up, I either leave a voicemail or I don't leave anything, and they'll just call me back. Oh, so-and-so called me though. And I feel like the corporatization of work and this idea that everything has to be so formal and on a schedule, it takes away from productivity. It's not efficient, and people should just be themselves more. And they should, the goal is to be productive and to help the company make the company money. And all this stuff, it's a huge reason why we started this show, the Work From Home show, because we wanted people to be able to feel that they can be free without being tied down to that corporate mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I'm a business owner and I work from home. I've been working from home for the past 7.5 years. I have my own strategies on how I've built my company. But what are your tips for building virtual teams from home?
Well, I think there's some real upsides of doing so. I mean, if you think about it, you can hire from anywhere. And that's a major upside for a small business. Like, you're not limiting your pool of people to an hour from you, that you can hire from anywhere. And if you can hire from anywhere, you can probably find better people than if you weren't. The fact that you're also not requiring people to come into the office. I mean, these days, everyone's working from home, but certainly in the past and probably going forward, being able to work from home is seen as a real perk. And so probably you can get better people, or you can get the same people, but maybe not, pay as much as you might otherwise have to do, if people know they're going to be working from home. So there's some real upsides there as a business owner. I think, in general, when you're hiring people, you always want to reach out through your network. People probably know good people. It's certainly one way to find good candidates. It also might be helpful to try people out on a project first, that neither of you is committing to anything long-term. You're just seeing how well you work together on something smaller. And if it works out, then great. Then you can keep working together longer term. But, using some of that flexibility that comes from having a virtual business to make sure that everyone's a good fit and everyone's going to be happy about it first.
So one of the things that I've heard people talk about and write about on the internet and Facebook that I've seen is a lot of people are concerned about when this pandemic ends, their boss actually requiring them or saying, hey, I want everybody back in the office. In your opinion, what are some of the things that that workers can best do, and that kind of managers can start to think about things to convince them that, I may need to go in every once in a while, but I don't need to go in all the time?
I've heard from a few people who are worried about this, that their managers have said, well, the only reason this is happening is because it's a crisis. And the only reason we're still getting stuff done is that we knew each other so well beforehand. It's like, well, are you sure? Is that the only reason stuff is getting done? And also just reminding people that this doesn't have to be either or. Like, you are not committing to going 100% virtual forever. Instead, there could be a very good middle ground where people work from home 2 to 3 days per week and people work in the office 2 to 3 days per week. And, maybe some people would have preferred to be 100% from home, but that seems to me like a good balance of, having that close in-person communication time and then also having days where you can do, your own individual work and really focus. I'm hoping also that as a number of kind of higher profile companies have said, well, it's okay to keep working from home. Like these stories get out through the business press. I mean, everyone always talks like, what is Google doing, right? Well, Google has now said people can work from home through summer of 2021. I think by that point, we're going to be pretty deeply entrenched in the habit. And who's going to go back full time after that? It seems quite unlikely.
In regards to that, I've had some people that I've talked with concerned about the fact as we become more results oriented and as the work from home becomes more ubiquitous, that vacation time is going to be a problem because their work is going to say, well, you worked from home. You can also work while you're, overseas, or when you're, you can work in the mornings before your family gets up when you're at the beach. How can people, as we go virtual and become results oriented, how can you still keep that differentiation between, hey, I'm at home, and hey, I'm not in the office, but I'm on vacation?
Well, I think we can certainly still have vacation days. Like none of these policies actually have to change. What you will see happen is that people will take fewer sick days, because when you're just sort of moderately sick or caring for a moderately sick family member, you don't want to expose anyone to your germs, but you can still get stuff done. So that will definitely change. I think you'll see fewer, of the sort of moderately sick days. But certainly, people can still negotiate for a certain number of vacation days. And that's just a question of whether your manager is good about boundaries or not. And some people are and some people aren't. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether you're working from home. Like they might still make you work on vacation even if you don't normally work from home. They're just like, well, I'm still going to call you just because that's what I'm doing. That said, I think there are some ways that, being a little bit less strict on some of these boundaries can have some upsides. I know that my husband and I have taken many more vacation weeks than we would have, because both of us can kind of work from anywhere. And because of that, like we can go to the beach. Like we have 3 beach weeks this summer after all our kids' camps got canceled. We sort of doubled down on beach weeks. And, it would be hard to take what's going to wind up being about 4 vacation weeks over the summer if I was doing 0 work during that time. But if I'm doing, an hour in the afternoon while the kids are watching TV, or some in the evening or morning, it's okay. Like I can be gone then for 4 weeks and still feel like I'm staying on top of things. So, yes, it's always a question of whether you're doing it because, your boss is making you, or because you want to. Those of us who work for ourselves can often be the toughest boss ever. But, there are some upsides of being a little bit flexible about these things.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the whole idea and concept of the 40-hour work week. That was a concept that was adopted back when the Prussian, I think Otto von Bismarck and the Prussians, he trained people. The education system was trained for really men to become workers in a factory. And so that's why they create, okay, it's 40 hours, 8 hours a day and 5 days a week. That's the way we're going to do this work. But now there's actual work to be done. It's not like you work 40 hours and if you still have 10 hours of work that needs to be done, you have to get it done. You can't just say, oh, I've worked my 40 hours this week, so I'm going to take, 2 days off and come back on Monday. You've got to still get that work done. And on the other hand, if you only have 20 hours of work to do in a week, you can do that 20 hours of work and you don't have to say, oh, I need more work so that I can have my 40-hour work week. You can just kind of do nothing or, do something else during those extra 20 hours. So I think the whole concept of the 40-hour work week is certainly going to be changed because of this work from home culture.
Yeah, I think it is. Although I have to say that, I've been setting kind of my task lists for a long time. And I know people who are running all virtual companies who've been setting sort of task lists for employees and working with them to create daily task lists. And there's something kind of satisfying about 8 hours. It's not. I don't think it's totally random. I don't think they pulled it completely out of the blue. It feels like a good amount of work. I think a 1 hour workday would leave people pretty bored, and a 13-hour workday leaves people feeling kind of overwhelmed. It's kind of good to be somewhere in the middle, and that's So even though I'm not aiming to work 40 hours a week, I often do wind up working 40 hours a week because I set myself the amount of work to do that about fits in 40 hours. And that's just something I've kind of figured out over the years, like, oh, this is the amount of work that will fit in that time. Now, if I get done quicker, great. If it takes me some extra time, that's fine. But, you can get good about estimating how much time it takes. And so that you do fill what you would consider sort of a normal workday time, but that's not the primary variable you're measuring by.
That was Laura Vanderkam, host of the Before Breakfast podcast, the New Corner Office podcast, and co-host of the Best of Both Worlds podcast. Her 2016 TED Talk, How to Gain Control of Your Free Time, has been viewed more than 5 million times. She is the author of the new book, The New Corner Office, How the Most Successful People Work from Home. Check out her website, lauravanderkam.com. That's Laura, VANDERKAM.com. Check us out online, workfromhomeshow.com. That's workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions or thoughts you want to send us, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. That's hello@workfromhomeshow.com. And until next time, keep on working from home.